This is Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. From the corporate office to the cab of a truck, they're here to inspire and empower women in all professions. So gear down, sit back, and enjoy.
Welcome. We're an award-winning show dedicated to empowering women in every profession through inspiring stories and expert insights. No topic is off limits on our show. We power women on the road to success with expert and celebrity interviews and information you need. I'm Shelley.
And I'm Kathy.
Have you ever met a true cowboy? How about a woman who's a cowboy? And a cowboy poet on top of that? We have one with us today. Nowell has raised and trained quarter horses and other breeds most of her life. She was the first woman on the Livestock Judging Team at New Mexico State University. Her first husband was a cowboy poet. She later cowboyed for the ZR Herford Ranch in the 1980s. She became known for her creativity. Kay's cowboy poetry was so popular, she was even featured on the Johnny Carson Show. Kay participates in cowboy poetry gatherings and entertains at cattle drives and other events. She and her husband, Gene Nowell, run their own Gelfie cow and calf herd. When she's not loading trucks, feeding a crew, or training horses, along with helping with a pipe and steel business, she plays bass or rhythm guitar in the No Chicken Wire Band for Big Bend Cowboy Church. She also plays fiddle, banjo, and mandolin. Kay is definitely not bored. Our show features a lot of women trailblazers, but we've never talked to a woman cowboy or a cowboy poet. We wanted to learn more about this, so we invited her on the show. Welcome, Kay.
Thank you for having me. This is a neat thing you all are doing.
Well, thank you. I love what you're doing.
I know, right? That's so cool.
So, do we use the name cowgirl or cowboy? How do you describe yourself?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. I take offense at being called a cowgirl. What I'd like to aspire to be is a cowboy girl. And there's a big difference. But it's cowboy's a verb, too. And it's the work that defines it. And girls can do it along with the guys. We're not as strong as they are, maybe, but we have to use our brains to figure out a way to get stuff done. But there are some really good hands out there that are women.
So for those who are not familiar, what is a cowboy or a cowboy girl? What do they do? What do they do?
Right after cattle, anything that involves taking care of cattle. We raise beef. We raise food, and it's a big job. You're dealing with the weather, government, all kinds of things, and it's tough. The hours are long. It's hard work. You're feeding, you're sorting, you're taking care of them, birthing. There's an awful lot to it, and it's a way of life instead of a job. You don't quit at 5 o'clock. You quit when the work's done.
Sure. Yeah.
That does sound like a lot.
Yeah. And, I really admire this. I've always loved horses. I know you've trained a ton of them. I have limited experience around them. They tend to mess with me, as a matter of fact, and they try to rub me off on trees. They know I'm an amateur.
Yeah, they see people in a hurry.
I've found that they definitely have a sense of humor, and I find it really amazing in a cattle drive or something like that. You not only have to be in charge of your horse, but then you've got to convince the cattle to do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Double work.
There's a whole science to stockmanship, which is, and it's the same thing with horses, making the right thing easy and the wrong thing hard. It's a lot of psychology. It's you're able to move cattle by where you place yourself, how close you get to them, how much pressure you put on them. And it's something I've always been fascinated by. And it's beautiful to watch somebody just slip in and sort cattle or do something with them and you hardly notice they're doing anything, but the work is just done.
What does it take to train a horse to do that? Because obviously they have to get used to having other animals around them, but you need to be able to move them in and out. I mean, that's quite an art.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's repetition for them. They have to figure out that they are alpha. They have to be comfortable with you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just training, and it takes time and rewarding the things you want, and keep hammering away on the things where they're doing stuff you weren't really after.
Sure. How long does it take to break a horse? Because obviously they are not designed in their mind to be carrying a human being on them.
It depends on the individual horse. Some of them just kind of break themselves. They'll go along with a lot. Others take much more time. They're all different. I broke about maybe 52 in my lifetime, and I don't do that anymore. I don't land like I used to, but that's a big question. They learn by repetition, and they've got to trust you, and you've got to know the psychology. They're a flight animal, and what's going to work, and what works on one horse doesn't work on the other one. You have to be real flexible and let them tell you what they need next.
Makes sense. Now, are quarter horses a better horse for what you're doing? I know cutting horses are used too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And most gray cutters and stuff are quarter horses, but they're good paint or Arab or whatever. A cutting horse needs to want to play.
Okay.
And that's when they mean when they say one has cow. It's they want to play. They're extremely intelligent. They're the ballerinas of horses. They're absolutely gorgeous to watch. A good cutting horse. I've had some they're so much fun. They call it the best seat in the house is sitting on a good cutter.
I've been on one cutting horse ranch, and it was in the spring of the year up in Michigan. And one of their more frisky horses was out, and it was the spring of the year. He just wanted to run. And people were saying, you may not want to get on his back because he will play with you. But it was interesting. I mean, he really was. He was kind of like a kid running around and doing his little dance and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you bet you. They're beautiful.
They really are. I love horses. I've always loved them, but have, like I said, limited experience. So I really admire people who can work with them. Now, I'm curious here. Cowboy poet. What is that? I had never heard of it before.
You and a lot of other folks. Cowboy poetry kind of got to be known way back in 1985 when three folklorists got together and said, we need to do something with this cowboy poetry that they had been finding, and this is all over the whole nation, in their different areas. And through the first one, they thought it'd be a one-time deal. And they did it in the middle of winter, in the middle of nowhere at Elko, Nevada in January. And it was amazing. All these poets that had come together and songwriters that a lot of them had never said their poems to anybody other than their horse or their tractor. They didn't know anybody else did this out there. And it was a hoot. I got to go to the first 8. They went on and did, 39 national cowboy poetry gatherings at Elko, Nevada. It's a wonderful, wonderful event and brings together people that are celebrating the cowboy and their way of life and the Western values and the history and keeping it going for, future generations.
That's so cool. And you got national attention by being on Johnny Carson. What happened with all of that? That's really neat.
I really, a lot of people thought that was a really great thing. I would rather be at a little regional gathering and have some old cowboy come up to me and say, I had a dog like that, or I rode a horse like that. To me, it meant a lot more than doing that, but it was a neat experience. I should have appreciated it more, but it was fun. I got to do it with Rod Nelson, who's a wonderful poet that's no longer with us, from North Dakota, and it was a great experience. And Johnny was the one that was pushing the cowboy poetry. It wasn't anybody else on his staff. Mm-hmm. He was the one that was really interested, and he had Baxter Black and Waddy Mitchell and other poets on that show.
Well, Johnny was originally a farm boy from Nebraska, wasn't he?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think he was. So he had an appreciation for all of that, too.
Yes.
He didn't forget his roots on that. Now,
right.
Cowboy poetry, does it rhyme? I guess probably the best question is, do you have maybe a short poem you could share with us?
You want just a short one, or do you want the one I did on the Tonight Show?
Whichever you think.
I do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is that one. It's called A What? And back when in 1981, I was cowboying for ZR Herford Ranch, and it was a registered outfit, so I had to keep records on all the calves as they were born. And one day I dismounted while I was out in Bill's East pasture trying to mammy up a calf with L117. And I looked off down the hill and saw this fellow walking up out there in the middle of nowhere. I didn't grab my 30-30, but I did get back on Smokey. And when he got close, he said he wanted permission to take photographs for an artist friend of his, Ramon Rice, to use for backdrops in his backgrounds in his paintings. And I told him there was some real pretty country way off down by the river near Puerto de Luna just to get him off the ranch. And to make a long story short, we ended up getting married.
That's great. Oh, my.
But this poem is a true account of what happened after the wedding. I mean, this really happened. And when I wrote it, it was meant for Brian's ears only. But I ended up doing it on the Tonight Show. It's called A What? The honeymoon was in full swing. We settled in Santa Fe. This cowgirl's starting a brand new life after our wedding day. I'd been picked up in the pasture by my handsome man of the West. One early morn, I questioned him while cuddled in our love nest. You told me you're a big ranch owner back when you were courting me. Well, now that the wedding's over, those ranches I'd like to see. Why, sure, he said, I'll be right back, as he leaped out of the bed. This here's my 36-inch ranch. The 24s are in the shed. A ranch owner is what you meant? I choked in disbelief. Yes, I'm a master plumber. His pride added to my grief. Now, my heroes had all been cowboys that stirred my romantic soul, and I had never seen John Wayne playing a plumber's role. Trying to restore the faith in him this revelation began to destroy, I asked him about Joe Lemon's ranch, where he'd worked summers as a boy. How many cows Joe Lemon run? Two milking Holsteins. No, how many cows out on the range where you cowboyed in your teens? Oh, it was a sheep ranch, he replied. My heart went numb in shock. I married a sheep herding plumber? The shriek could be heard for blocks. Too late to run, the vow was made. I tried to carry on. When friends would ask, how's married life? My reply was, I was conned. The sting wasn't in it with my guy. He'd employed every trick and ruse. His morals and scruples were shiny clean. They never had been used. Through the years, I've come to know him well as we loped through life together. I've ridden many a mile with him, in both good and stormy weather. The honeymoon's still in full swing. He's my partner and best friend. I'm thankful now that I got conned. Things work out best in the end. So I'll stick with my sheep-herding plumber right into eternity, for he'll do to ride the river with, and he sure is special to me.
I love it.
Wow,
Ooh,
that's beautiful.
That's
Thank you.
great. I love your sense of humor, too.
Oh,
It's an amusing and very melodic poem, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Really
It's got a really beautiful flow to it.
Uh-huh. Yes, it does. The poem draws people in and helps them experience part of your life. It tells a story, especially a story of what it's like to be a cowboy and some of the aspirations. Do you typically pull from some of your personal experiences when you're writing the poetry, or do you pull some of it from history? Because when we think of cowboys, we think of the Westerns and that kind of thing. John Wayne, of course. You know.
yeah, and you've touched on something big about the poetry, and poetry is like it's like a condensed version of somebody. You can listen to someone do 3 poems and know a lot more about them than if you'd visited with them for about a couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Joel Nelson says, is the distilled version of his life, and they kind of represent what you've done.
It really does. I used to write poetry in school and that kind of thing, but I haven't in years. And I think sometimes people think poetry might be boring if they haven't heard it. You know, there's a lot of meaning. And of course, I remember in school they talked about the iambic pentameter and things like that with the structure. I think that throws people off with their creativity. When you think about it, music is just the lyrics are poetry put to music. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. And it's if good poetry is what people need to be exposed to. The good stuff is there are poets that really hone their craft, that work hard on making sure it's correct. And there's rhyme poetry, and then there's free verse and blank verse and the other stuff. All of it is good when it does something that moves you, and or tells a story or looks at something in a different way. Poetry is wonderful.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I have one question for you. Do you want to stop worrying about the IRS? If the answer is yes, then look no further. I've been around for years. I've helped countless people across the country, and my success rate speaks for itself. So now you know where to find good, honest help with your tax problems. What are you waiting for? If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or haven't filed in years, call me now at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com for a free consultation and get your life back.
Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry. Our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of. And join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
If you're enjoying this informative episode of Women Road Warriors, I wanted to mention Kathy and I explore all kinds of topics that will power you on the road to success. We feature a lot of expert interviews. Plus, we feature celebrities and women who've been trailblazers. Please check out our podcast at womenroadwarriors.com and click on our episodes page. We're also available wherever you listen to podcasts, on all the major podcast channels like Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Amazon Music, Audible, you name it. Check us out and bookmark our podcast. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, YouTube, and other sites. And tell others about us. We want to help as many women as possible. Being a cowboy takes a lot of work and skill. With breaking and training horses and going on cattle drives take a lot of psychology. It's an art. And so is cowboy poetry. Kay Nowell has done all of these things, and she's a cowboy and a nationally recognized cowboy poet who was even featured on the Johnny Carson Show. She's sharing her life experiences and her poetry that's made her famous. She celebrates the cowboy and the way of life, the Western values, and the history of the cowboy to keep it going for future generations. Kay participates in cowboy poetry gatherings, and she entertains at cattle drives and other events. When she's not doing that, she's a musician. Her poems tell a story, and they move a person who hears them. Kay, I didn't realize that cowboy poetry was this popular. You've got all kinds of competitions and symposiums and celebrations. I was seeing that you performed at the first 3 National Cowboy Symposium and celebrations in Lubbock, Texas.
Yeah.
And I think most recently with the 2017 Durango Cowboy Poetry Gathering. Are a lot of people attending these events? And
Yes, ma'am. Sometimes they'll have 10,000 people at Elko. These regional gatherings that shot off after the first big one in 1985, they started having regional gatherings, the Texas Cowboy Poetry Gathering, the Arizona Cowboy Poets Gathering were some of the early ones, but they're I think about a year or so ago, there were 152 gatherings around the United States. Yeah. And the ones that try to keep it cowboy, that go back to, what started this movement are real popular. And that's the direction we're going with the Lone Star Cowboy Poetry Gathering that I'm really involved with here in Alpine.
this keeps the awareness, I think, of the cowboy, the Western heritage, the cowboy heritage, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good way for people to get a real feel for the whole, all of the challenges, everything that has gone on.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of work. There's a lot of art. I mean, there's a lot of skill it takes to be a cowboy. We think of them riding out west with the cattle drives and the covered wagons, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you had your lead cowboy. That's not what they called them. But they had to know the lay of the land. People were hired just to do that, weren't they? I mean, they had all kinds of jobs in the 1800s.
Mm-hmm. You had your trail drivers and whoever was leading the trail drives. And then
the wagoneer. That's what I was thinking. The wagoneer.
Yeah. Yep. That would be more of somebody probably taking a wagon train of people moving through there. And then there were the great trail drives, the Butterfield Trail, the Great Western Trail, Goodnight Loving Trail, all those that moved cattle up to other parts of the United States.
Do you remember the movie City Slickers?
Oh yeah. I loved it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think when I'm so not a cowgirl or boy in any way, shape, or form. And it's like, yeah, that'd probably be me, I don't know if you ever heard of here in Canada, I live in Calgary, the Calgary Stampede.
Oh yeah. No, I'd love to go see Calgary.
Yeah, that it's pretty famous. And I hate to say it, I've never been. And even though I live I used to live in Calgary, but I don't know. I have a problem with major crowds like that. And there's so many people that show up for the Calgary Stampede. It's like a worldwide event.
Oh yeah.
It's like, my God.
So what goes on in the event? Is it like a cattle drive or what is it?
It's mostly a rodeo event.
Rodeo. Rodeo.
Really big rodeo.
Okay.
Yeah. Chuck wagon races and all sorts of things, but it's very well known.
And fortunately, RFD-TV is putting a lot of these wonderful events on TV, so you can sit at home and watch the Calvary next year.
Yeah,
that's pretty neat. Well, I know in Houston, isn't that one of the biggest rodeos in the nation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people come to that. So, and I
was
love
in-
it. Oh, go ahead,
sorry,
Kathy.
I was in Dallas in November for that Women in Trucking conference, and it was the first time I'd been to Fort Worth. And we went to a steakhouse down there. There was a group of 17 of us, and we went on what's that name of that street? Something yard, Stockyard.
But the stockyards, yeah. Did you get to go through the stockyards?
No, well, no, they did because I was speaking, and by the time I got there, it was a little late. But they were showing me pictures, and they still do cattle drives through that road. The Longhorn.
Yeah, I've sat on one of them. It's stockyards is really cool. The thing I hate is they just keep tearing down parts of the old yards and putting more tourist stuff in. But yeah, it gives you a kind of a feel. They have a lot of people that dress in period clothing, and they've got some big horned longhorns in that drive, and they go through, I think, once or twice a day. They run them right down the street.
Yeah,
And
it's pretty cool.
It's fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So I'm going back in November again. This time I'm going to pre-plan
You bet.
to see that, because it's an event, right? It's,
Sure.
being
Make
kind of
sure
a city girl, it's not something that I get to see very often. So yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of history if you'll go into the hotel there and whatever. I spent a lot of time just reading the labels under all the historical photographs. It's a cool place. A lot of history in that area.
Oh yeah, it sure seemed it. So I'm going to take a day before the conference and just go spend me time down in Fort Worth a bit.
That'd be neat.
It's a rich history of all of that, and people don't think about it. And it's a tradition. There are families that have done this for generations, and it sounds like you have done the same thing because you've been working with horses since you were a little kid.
Yes, ma'am. I was horse crazy when I was born. So I've been real fortunate to be able to do the things I have done. I don't take that for granted.
I don't think people think about it, but I think that people who run ranches and who do this sort of thing, they're in harmony. They're in harmony with the land and Mother Nature and everything, which is not something that people necessarily have in their everyday work. That's one of the benefits that you have.
This is one thing that people find, so attractive to these cowboy poetry gatherings, because they're a different deal. They're, and I'm versus a festival or a concert or any other kind of activity. The gatherings are really like a great big campfire. You have all these people, the real authentic folks off the land that are extremely talented and sharing a picture of their world with the people. And they're accessible. You can visit with them. It's a different deal. It's a celebration, and there's not a competition in a gathering.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I have one question for you. Do you want to stop worrying about the IRS? If the answer is yes, then look no further. I've been around for years. I've helped countless people across the country, and my success rate speaks for itself. So now you know where to find good, honest help with your tax problems. What are you waiting for? If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or haven't filed in years, call me now at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com for a free consultation and get your life back.
Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry. Our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of. And join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
Cowboy poetry gatherings are held every year. Thousands of people attend them. These include regional events like the Texas Cowboy Poetry Gathering. There are 152 regional gatherings around the United States. The ones that try to keep it all cowboy are very popular and include events like the Lone Star Cowboy Poetry Gathering in Alpine, Texas. That's where you'll find Kay Nowell. Kay is a real-life cowboy and nationally known cowboy poet who participates in these events. She's a true trailblazer who lives the cowboy dream. When she's not processing cattle, loading trucks, feeding a crew, or training horses, she keeps the books for a pipe and steel business that she and her husband bought that runs along with their feedlot and hog racing facility. In her spare time, she plays bass or rhythm guitar in the No Chicken Wire Band for the Big Bend Cowboy Church in Texas. Kay plays fiddle, banjo, and mandolin. She's quite the lady and multi-talented with not only music, but poetry. Kay, I was just thinking, who is interesting, who's a musician who's had a lot of fascination with what's gone on out west and certainly with the cowboys and in the whole culture is Michael Martin Murphey. I actually interviewed him.
Oh, Murph, yeah.
And do you know him?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. He's part of the Santa Fe Trail Association. He's one of their spokespeople. And it was just fascinating when he was talking about the history of how the United States developed out west and the Santa Fe Trail and all of that and all of the challenges people had.
Yeah.
The history is so rich and there's so much more to it than what we've seen in Hollywood. And I love what you're doing with the cowboy poetry because I think you're bringing some of that essence to people where they can actually get a grasp of the whole feel of what it's all about. I would imagine all of the topics are different based on whoever writes the poetry. Do you have a specific topic you like to typically cover?
You mean to write about?
Yeah.
No, usually they just come to you at about 4:00 in the morning and you better write them down because it'll be gone. The thing about, I think Stanley Kunitz didn't write a poem until he was about 75, but he wrote a lot of wonderful, wonderful poetry. But one of the quotes he said that always seemed important to me was he said that and I'm paraphrasing, I can't remember it, if we are to know what it felt like to be alive at any point in history, it is to poetry we must turn. And that kind of sums it up, that the poetry tells you what it feels like in those different instances, points in time, whatever, and that's what it passes on.
I like that.
Yeah.
And I would think today where we're so loaded up with technology and things that are so impersonal, it gives them a respite from all of that. Going to these gatherings, it takes people back to when things were real.
Yep, that's the biggest attraction to it is they realize what they're hearing is real. It's authentic. Yeah, those people have been there, done that, and they're sharing that part of their life with you. And it's people that have memories of summers on grandpa's farm or always wanted to be a cowboy or whatever, and then celebrating along with all the ranchers and cowboys and people that love this way of life. It's a great thing.
I'm sure that technology has changed some of the things and how things are done. But overall, it sounds like it hasn't changed that much from the way it was done back in the 1800s.
I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that,
Well,
Shelley.
in terms of cattle drives and ranching and all of that, and dealing with the animals.
Cow, it's an animal with a mind of its own that you've got to figure out the shiniest way to do it with the least stress on them. So that is sort of timeless. You're right.
Are cattle stubborn? I imagine that they are. No, they aren't? Okay.
Some of them can be perverse. It's just understanding. You've got to be able to read them. You've got to be able to know if you've stepped inside their bubble, if you're putting pressure on them or not. It's a dance and an art to getting them to do what you need them to do without them being stressed out.
Makes sense. So how often are cattle drives done out west on the ranches? I mean, do you have to bring them in for vaccinations, that sort of thing, or you have to move them from one area to another? on a pretty regular basis, or?
Yeah, the cattle drives per se are usually only done when people have some high country or low country and they're moving them around on their ranches to put them in summer pasture or winter pasture.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just when you gather everything and you move them. Every year in the spring, you will have a branding and brand everything that's hit the ground at that time. And then in the fall, there's fall works. And that's when you're usually shipping, and you'll sort off the ones you want to sell and which ones you're going to keep.
Okay.
So there's all kinds of work goes on at different parts of the year, but it keeps you busy.
It sounds like it, and you still do all of that, don't you?
Not as much now. Myself, we have a feedlot in Alpine, and we kind of got droughed out on our herd. It just didn't rain for a long time, and ended up having to sell all of them. So that's been heartbreaking.
Oh yeah, droughts have been. That's cost ranchers a lot. It's very, very sad for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You've really been a trailblazer, Kay. Bringing, yeah. With the cowboy poetry, you brought that to the forefront in the 1980s.
I just was along for the ride in a sense, with, the first Elkos and whatever. Later, staying in it, and then I performed all over the country and gotten to meet the most wonderful people, salt of the earth there is, and feel very, very fortunate to know these folks. And then helping with being on boards and stuff on different gatherings. And now working so closely with, the Bob Salt family on the Lone Star Cowboy Poetry Gathering. Yeah, it's been quite a ride.
So if somebody wants to do what you're doing, to be a cowboy poet, I mean, it sounds like there are events all over. You said 150 events across the United States?
Somewhere around there.
Yeah. Wow.
Who knew, right? Who knew?
Who knew?
Really,
it was amazing. They had that first one, and they got a lot of people. I think the next year, People Magazine, the Wall Street Journal, all these other folks had written articles about it, and it was a novelty. People, what's cowboy poetry?
Yeah.
And then folks came out and found out and find the community, the tribe, the culture sharing that goes on at one of these, and they get hooked. And they go back. They can't explain it to their friends. They just tell them, you got to come next year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's been really magical about it.
You're bringing a tradition and a past to life. You're bringing the historical figures that we've heard and read about. You can kind of get a feel for the nuance of that whole time and all of the people and all of the tremendous work. I mean, it's not easy to be a cowboy.
No, ma'am.
And to be a rancher and all of those activities. So if somebody wanted to go to these events, where would they look online? Is there an association?
No, you can pull up Cowboy Poetry Gathering, and there'll be lots of sites you can go to. They all need to go to the Lone Star Cowboy Poetry Gathering and come to Alpine. And but they can Google their state or anything and find gatherings out there. If they'll just Google Cowboy Poetry Gathering.
I love what you're doing. And
thank you.
So do you write poetry pretty regularly, like once a week?
Oh, no. I don't have time now.
Okay.
This thing's a 24/7 job. And it would be neat to have time and work more on my poetry. I haven't written anything new in about a year or two.
Well, you certainly have been honored. You're the 2019 recipient of the Texas Cowboy Poetry Heritage Award.
Oh, that was neat.
Very neat.
Very honored.
Wow.
And you were on the committee for the Texas Cowboy Poetry Gathering in 2011. You've been very active in all of that, keeping it alive. And I like the fact it sounds like it's growing. It's not something that
yes, ma'am,
is going by the wayside. So we're keeping the tradition alive. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking for. They want to get back to their roots in so many ways because they feel like their life is out of control.
Yeah, you've hit it. You betcha.
Mm-hmm. This has been a pleasure, Kay. Like I said, I had never heard of cowboy poetry. And when Barry had reached out to me about you, I'm like, yeah, this sounds really neat. And I like the fact that you're a trailblazer. You were at the beginning of creating a trend back in the 1980s.
Yep, following along. You betcha.
So if somebody wanted to get into, I guess the proper term, is it animal husbandry? If somebody wanted, if somebody wanted to get into being a cowboy girl, being a ranch hand, or even starting their own ranch, which is, I'm sure, something you have to build to. How would they go about that?
Oh, boy. They can, if they can go to schools like agricultural universities, can give them information. If they can find somebody to mentor under that runs a ranch that will put up with the dude that they can learn from. It's like I said, the work is earned and the titles are earned. They just would have to have this passion for that way of life and go get a job in it and just keep looking for opportunities to excel in that pathway. I was a city kid and, I got to this point. So it's just finding somebody that will teach you this way of life.
I imagine it takes a while to learn the ropes.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a lifetime. That's the horrible part of it. Right when you're just kind of starting to get it figured out and pretty good, you're too old to do it anymore.
Right.
It's it's a lifetime. You're always learning. You never learn it all.
It's pretty rigorous. And I would imagine when you're trying to do a cattle drive or something like that, there's a huge learning curve to doing that to get the cattle to go where you want it to, or lasso or whatever.
City slickers.
There you go. Yep, the movie. That's a good introduction.
Dealing with large, dangerous animals and the weather and all kinds of things can happen. Mama Nature can really give you a turn. So, yeah, you bet.
It takes tenacity. It takes a lot of courage and ambition.
Yeah.
It brings out the best in people, I think.
I would think so. That's why this is being able to hang out with these extremely talented, gifted people has been the great joy of me being around cowboy poetry.
Very neat. Thank you, Kay. I really appreciate you being on our show. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
We hope you've enjoyed this latest episode. And if you want to hear more episodes of Women Road Warriors or learn more about our show, be sure to check out womenroadwarriors.com. And please follow us on social media. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. On our website, we also have a selection of podcasts just for women. They're a series of podcasts from different podcasters. So if you're in the mood for women's podcasts, just click the Power Network tab on womenroadwarriors.com. You'll have a variety of shows to listen to anytime you want to. Podcasts made for women. Women Road Warriors is on all the major podcast channels like Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Audible, YouTube, and others. So check us out, and please follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. If you want to be a guest on the show or have a topic or feedback, email us at sjohnson@womenroadwarriors.com.
Turn your dial to find the frequency of the past.
Captain Midnight.
Where the classic stories of mysteries, sci-fi, thrillers, and suspense are found waiting to be heard once again.
Another case for Nick Carter, Master Detective.
You'll find a variety of those stories here, in their original form, where each episode takes you to another place or time.
The Man of Bronze, Doc Savage.
But only when you find the mystery frequency. Available everywhere.
The shadow knows.